afternoon, councillors, members of the public, officers, welcome along. I declare this meeting open. Under announcements, I was very pleased and proud to hear that we had about 10 volunteers from the Bunbury area go across and help South Australia with their flood relief efforts, and they were led by Chris Widmer from the City of Bunbury staff, so well done to those, and thanks Councillor Cook for bringing that to my attention. Additional expenses for the month for me was fuel, $60.66. We're all here, despite Councillor Steck being on approved leave of absence. Can't keep away, that's great. Declarations of interest. Councillor Warnock declares impartiality interest in respect to item 10.26. Councillor Giles declares a proximity interest in respect to item 10.41. Councillor Hayward declares a financial interest with respect to item 10.42. Councillor Hayward also declares an impartiality interest with respect to item 10.26. Councillor Steck declares a financial interest with respect to item 10.2.3. Are there any further declarations, councillors? Thank you. Public question time, Mr. Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The three questions meeting are question one. On what dates did each of the following sign the lease for the Hay Park South Division? The City of Bunbury, the Soccer Club, the Rugby Club, and the Minister of Tourism. Question two, the Council has been informed that Regulation 30 exempts the leases to sporting groups and other not-for-profit incorporated associations from the provisions of the Local Government Act requiring proposed leases to be advertised, so in effect such leases will not have to be made. Question three, has Council received any legal advice that the time for the incorporation of the new entity will not be extended to all of the parties to the lease agreed before or after the expiry of that time? And if it has, will Council provide a copy of that advice with the other parties to the lease?
Thank you, Mr. CEO.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. In relation to question one, the City signed it on the 2nd of March, the Soccer Club signed it on the 2nd of March, the Rugby Club signed it on the 1st of March, and the ministerial letter of approval was received on the 1st of March. In relation to question two, no, the provisions of regulations are contained in the Council report. The exemption does not apply to assets other than land with a value of greater than $20,000. In relation to question three, no, Council hasn't got any legal advice.
Thank you very much. Can I have someone move confirmation of the minutes of the last meeting, please? Councillor Cook, Councillor Giles, all in favour? It's carried unanimously, thank you. Are there any petitions, councillors? Thank you. We have requests for deputations tonight. Mr. Burns wishes to speak on item 10.4.2. Those who agree, please indicate. That's approved. Mr. Davis requests approval to speak on 10.3.1. Those who agree, please indicate. Jen Curtis wishes to speak on item 10.3, same item, 10.3, the Hay Park Multipurpose Facility. Those who approve, please indicate. It's approved. Mr. Smith seeks to address Council on the same item if Council agrees to add an item that relates to the future of the Hay Park South Pavilion. Those who support that, please indicate. 7. Those who don't. That's approved. Method of dealing with the agenda tonight, councillors, coming out at 10.2.3, 10.2.5, 10.2.6, 10.3.1, 10.4.1, 10.4.2. Are there any others that you wish to pull out? Councillor Jones?
10.4.3,
Can I have someone move the remaining items be approved? Councillor Jones, Councillor Cook, all in favour? That's carried unanimously. Thank you. We go to 10.23. Someone prepared to move the recommendation? Thanks. Sorry, Councillor Steck. Someone prepared to move the executive recommendation? Councillor Hayward. Seconder? I'll second it. Councillor Hayward.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. Obviously, in making a decision about this, we need to consider what the community's told us about what they feel about the future, and we need to consider, I think, as Jeff Hill very aptly described it, as making a decision around the opportunity cost. So what we have here is a parcel of land where we've been approached, as you know, and we have a significant shopping centre in town that has significant plans to develop its facility, which is going to be fantastic for our community. It'll be great in terms of providing jobs for the future, and also help give that vibrancy that we're looking for in our city. One of the great things that we achieve if we do sell this block of land is we give them a security of tenure over that space, which I believe will help them make that business decision to take it to the next step. And I think that that's an opportunity that we need not to forget as well. The other side of the coin is what potentially the city can do with the $5.5 million. And in terms of what our plan is at the moment, in terms of that parking facility that's being sold, being put into the potential development around here of the multi-storey car park as part of a wider development for that precinct, I think is also very, very good. The opportunity it gives us in terms of being able to get on and get that done more quickly, I think is good for our community and good for our city. That'll obviously create some jobs as well in the initial construction phases, and also give our city security of tenure into the future in terms of that car parking space. And plus, I believe it'll also be a money-making model that will actually assist the city as well. So there's two very strong opportunities, I think, that we can't ignore. The sale price in this particular recommendation does not accept $5.5 million. It says that we're going to go back and try to negotiate for some more, and we are basically empowering our CEO to go and do that. So I think that we've got that covered off. I know that there is some disappointment around the community about the sale price in terms of its valuation, but my view is that the opportunity cost outweigh the reduction in the sale price, and on that basis that we should support it. So I'd urge you to do the same. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hayward. I'll speak at this moment as a seconder. The fact we got 6 submissions, councillors, indicates to me that the general community have empowered us, which is right, to make a decision on behalf of the community. Of those 6 submissions, 2 or 3 questioned the price. Not argued against it, but questioned it. The fact is that with the proposal to use that funding to go into the parking reserve, and I know that a few of you have concerns about that, as the CEO pointed out to us at the briefing session, we cannot get government grants to build car parks. We can get government grants to build art galleries, do civic cultural precinct improvements, but we can't get money to build deck car parks or car parks full stop. This money is being provided through the sale of the car park. The money raised, $5.5 million at least, if invested today, will generate more money than the current lease payments that the city receives. CEO has explained that in a previous report as well. So, as Councillor Hayward said, this is empowering the CEO to go back and negotiate with Prime West at a price not less than $5.5 million. The opportunity cost of this investment for the city's future is significant. It's not up to us to start arguing about what we should be claiming or selling at a much higher price. That's for the market to determine. The CEO understands that, Prime West understands that, and we understand that as well. Speaker against. Councillor Kelly.
Mr Mayor, I'd just like to propose an amendment to the figure rather than as the sale price of no less than 5.5 million, I'd like to put the price at 6.3 million. If I can get a seconder, please.
Councillor McCleary. Councillor Kelly.
Yep, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Look, I think I've had a fair few discussions with people out there and read the submissions along with everybody else. Section 3.58 of the Local Government Act 4C gives us, beyond primatur, the market value of the disposition as ascertained by evaluation carried out not more than 6 months before the proposed disposition. We had a value that said it was worth $6.3 million if it was unencumbered. I had a discussion with somebody the other day and they said to me, well, look, if it was sold at 5.5 and the people who were buying it went into the bank and said, we need to borrow the money, and the bank would first say, is it encumbered? And if the owner said, well, yes, it is, but it's encumbered to ourselves, then they'd say, well, that's not encumbered. And I'm quite convinced that the unencumbered value of this lot is 6.3 million. And I think that it's our duty as a city council to make sure that we get the best deal for our ratepayers on this. I'm quite sure that ultimately the investors of the Centrepoint would come at that. And I think by putting a floor on it at 6.3, which was the value that was given to us, I think that's a fair deal for the ratepayers, a fair deal for all, and the CEO can go and negotiate on that basis. So it's a small amendment. It just takes it from 5.5 million up to the value that was given by the valuers at 6.3, and I think that will serve us and serve our ratepayers well, Mr. Mayor. So asking councillors to support the amendment to replace 5.5 million with 6.3 million. Thanks, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor McCleary. Speaker against the amendment. Councillor Hayward.
The real risk is that at 6.3, if it doesn't fly, that means our opportunity's gone. And there's a cost to that. So what we're looking at is $800,000. That's the gap between the 5.5 and the 6.3. There'll be many properties in Bunbury at the moment that are selling under their bank valuation. I don't think there's any question about that. Many of us live in the houses that would currently be being sold under their valuation. So I think that we need to consider that as we consider this. It's around about, on my maths, which is not that great, about 11 or 12% off the mark, and I just think that to go in at 6.3 is too high. I'd consider an amendment that wasn't as high as that, but I think ultimately if we lose this opportunity for our constituents, it'll cost us a lot more than $800,000.
Speaker for. Councillor Kelly.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, it's not a risk. I think if we hold out for our price, which is our price, there's no risk to us. The property does earn dollars, and it will continue to earn dollars, and I'm sure that the people down at Centrepoint will reconsider. It's no risk because it will be worth more eventually. I can't see it sitting there forever. Yes, it is a bit of a downturn, but this is not lost. There's nothing lost about this. We're just being clever. We're being nimble, and we're being appropriately diligent for the ratepayers on a property that they own and that we've had valued at 6.3 million in certain circumstances. So I think that the 6.3 million is a good deal for us, and it may well be a good deal for them as well, Mr. Mayor. So encouraging the support of the amendment. Thank you.
I'll put the amendment. All in favour, please indicate. Those against? That's carried. The amendment becomes the motion. Is there a further speaker against? I'll put it. All in favour. Those against? One. That's carried. Thank you. Thanks, Councillor Cook. We move to 10.25. So I'm prepared to move the executive recommendation. Councillor McCleary. Yes.
Report to Council in 6 months' time.
That's acceptable. Is there a seconder? Councillor Kelly. Councillor McCleary.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We are investing $73,000 eventually into this, into the regional tourism strategy. So I believe that it's most appropriate to have a report come alongside. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Kelly.
Mr Mayor, just that's good diligence as well. We want to be able to track that as councillors, as governments, and make sure we get tax on it. So totally good with that. Thank you.
Okay, anyone wishes to speak against it? I'll put it all in favour. It's carried unanimously. Thank you. 10.26, we have impartiality interest declarations, so I'm prepared to move. Thank you, Councillor Steck. Second up, Councillor Cook. Any debate?
Yes.
Councillor Steck, do you wish to speak? Councillor Cook. Speaker against, Councillor McCleary.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm going to be speaking against this and voting against it because I believe we do our community and all the candidates a disservice to endorse the items as listed as the top 5 priorities for the future state government. Why? We have not backed up the list with the appropriate sustainable strategies, financial or otherwise. This is a Santa's wish list, unprofessional and not worth the paper it's written on. In my book, it is a populist stunt. I'm not prepared to either disappoint or mislead the community with this recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor McCleary. Speaker 4. Councillor Steck.
Thank you, sir. Whilst I wouldn't express my views with such harsh words, I just simply say that councillors just have a collaborative view with the community just to express what possibly could occur, and it's up to the government to decide of the day what they're going to spend their money on, and no one's telling them what to do. So I urge councillors to adopt the policy.
I'll put it all in favour. Those against? 4 against. Steele, Giles, Kelly, McCleary. The rest voted in favour. Thank you. 10.3.1. Miss Jen Curtis. For each of the speakers, you have 5 minutes. Welcome along. Yeah. It should be on anyway.
It wasn't. Thank you, Mr. Mayor and councillors, for once again allowing us to address council on this very important issue. For all of us on the committee, this has been a very stressful few weeks, taking us away from what is really important here, and that's the juniors and seniors having the opportunity and experience of competing at the highest level in soccer. The uncertainty created by the issues surrounding the void lease, being asked to vacate the premises under the MOU, and the possibility of advertising for public expressions of interest have had a very deep impact on us all. Much time and effort has been spent trying to understand and resolve this issue. This has also been an interesting and enlightening insight into the council for many of us. Some of what has been highlighted to us during this time includes, first and foremost, we, the South West Sporting Association, made one administrative error. Secondly, we all have a desire, including the City of Bunbury, to have the most effective model for management of the facility. Thirdly, all parties need to improve flows of information to ensure key outcomes are achieved. Fourth, this is a multi-use facility and the South West Sporting Association is structured to allow this to be realised, much the same way as the Leschenault Sporting Association is, which has been referenced many times in recent discussions. And lastly, a lack of consultation and understanding being employed at a city level prior to voiding our lease and looking to seek other possible tenants. The suggestion that many sporting clubs have use of the facility has been raised, and we reiterate that under our management via the lease, this access has been made available whenever possible to other bookings. There has been no restriction to any other sporting associations or individual using the facility and sharing the amenities with soccer and rugby. As with all community facilities, working together and allowing more community members to use such a great facility was always our ongoing intent. We maintain belief that the more the facility was used, the more benefits accrued to South West Phoenix and South West Warriors, as the revenue raised would contribute to the overall facility operation and success of both clubs. The use of the facility by many is beneficial to all in the local community and the South West Sporting Association. We also maintain that the ongoing management of the facility should be facilitated by South West Sporting Association. We would argue that South West Phoenix and South West Warriors have not been given enough opportunity to demonstrate the potential of the Hay Park Multi-Sporting Pavilion and its financial viability. Both clubs moved into the facility a week before their season started. For the juniors in South West Phoenix, it was also their inaugural National Premier League system. Running the clubs in the first season at the facility has been very successful, despite it being a learning curve for all. Future events planned for the off-season have been put on hold due to the uncertainty this issue has created. Junior sporting programs, summer competitions are just some of the programs that have been planned but are in limbo at the minute. The management of the new facilities has only been underway 6 months, corresponding with both clubs' operating seasons. A joint committee comprising members of both clubs has now been formalised to progress with the management of the facility. Managing the facility jointly will provide an income source and requirement for cooperation between soccer and rugby, which will be absent in the event that other management structures are used. It will be beneficial for both clubs to manage their co-use and form joint strategic plans for the use and development of the facility, rather than for council or some other entity to try to manage multiple sporting codes jostling for use. The management of the facility by the Incorporated Association will enable the clubs to be financial and enable financial growth. The continuing development of the governance and management roles within the South West Sporting Association will be facilitated by pro bono work from qualified and experienced local legal representatives. The facility has been utilised by outside parties during this initial period lease, and as time goes on and more use will eventuate. Community access to this great facility will continue, as has always been the case. At the end of the day, if Council would support South West Phoenix and South West Warriors, which is now incorporated under the South West Sporting Association, to be reinstated tenants under the current lease terms and conditions, the management of the facility can continue to thrive and be the example of sporting clubs working together in the City of Bunbury. On the matter of the lease, our advice is that reinstating the lease or re-signing under the same terms and conditions as possible due to an exemption to Local Government Clause 3.58. read in conjunction with Local Government Regulation 30. Regulation 30 allows an exemption for the City of Bunbury to advertise for public expressions of interest, and therefore enabling your decision to be made, which will then allow the continuation of both clubs offering fantastic sporting programs and opportunities to the community. Please consider a reinstatement of the lease under the same terms and conditions, and let the clubs
Ms Curtis, you'll need to conclude.
With being a community sporting club run by very dedicated volunteers. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Mr Davis.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Rutany Davis. I'm the president of the South West Warriors Rugby League Club. My current residence is 8 Gallon Close, Eton. I'd like to take this opportunity to thank all the councillors, the CEO and the Honourable Mayor for giving myself this opportunity on our club's behalf to submit a deputation in regards to the item 10.31. It's been documented to date on the veritables of our shortcomings, of our obligations to not being able to honour the legalities of the lease, causing it to be null and void. In relation to that, an email was sent out to the parties involved, the city officers, the councillors and the Honourable Mayor, from our former South West Warriors Rugby League representative, who originally had the task of undertaking all that was involved. The email was sent on the 13th of the 9th, 2016. The need for the email was to explain in depth matters that arose from the Ordinary Council meeting on the 6th of the 9th, 2016. Also in support of Jen Curtis of the South West Phoenix, who had submitted a deputation on that night as well. With the understanding of the serious nature of the lease being null and void, being informed of the protocols and procedures needed to be adhered to in accordance to the law from the officers, ourselves and the South West Phoenix and the officers have been trying to implement contingency plans to hopefully rectify or find alternative means of moving forward for all parties involved. In relation to us moving forward with the discrepancy of the lease being null and void from the 1st of the 9th, 2016, we've been able to formalise the entity now. We've also been able to constitutionalise it, which was lodged on the 8th of the 9th, 2016, received back from the Chamber of Commerce on the 14th of the 9th, 2016, also having to set up our financial aspects to make it viable as well. Knowing full well all of this was done after the fact, which was discussed in detail at our most recent general meeting at the Hay Park Pavilion on the 29th of the 9th, 2016. Along with electing new representatives and wanting to finalise and govern our constitution to present to the City of Bunbury. Again, all of this done was with the notion of us wanting to work with all parties involved to hopefully progressively move forward with a favourable resolution. As a sporting association, the ramifications of us not being involved in the Hay Park Pavilion will be very detrimental to not only our sport rugby league, but to the wider community of Bunbury. Within our junior rugby league program, we've started a rugby league satellite competition that's solely based out of Hay Park on a Friday night, which has been successfully supported by members of various clubs in different codes, such as your Bunbury Bulls Rugby Club, Magic's Netball Association, the Bunbury Barbarians Rugby Club, South West Phoenix Junior Soccer Club, Bustleton Jets Rugby Club, and the Bunbury All Stars Touch Football Association. Just to enable all our kids to try a new sport, meet new friends, remain active, and to proudly represent their region within our junior rugby league satellite competition. Representing suburbs within our city of Bunbury, such as the Australian Cowboys, Dalielap Rhinos, Eton Panthers, the Bunbury Titans, and the Bustleton Broncos. So as you can see, the detrimental impact it could have on all of our kids involved in our junior rugby league program if we don't have the opportunity to take in the Hay Park Pavilion. Our senior rugby league component, just like our South West Phoenix counterparts, participated in the very competitive Perth competition. Our club was established in 2010. We were very humbled and fortunate in winning the reserve grade competition in 2011. Expectations from our state governing body, the NRLWA, and within our club as well, were that we would make the natural progression up to the highest pinnacle within our sport by competing in the A-grade Smarter Than Smoking Premiership. At the time, we believed we were not ready for that due to the lack of infrastructure, but having resided in Hay Park Pavilion for our first initial season this year, we as a club can see the possibilities of us being able to strive for success again. And wanting to acknowledge all the hard work done by our previous committee members, individuals from our association and guidance from former councillors and councils, and also grateful recipients of the government grants from the Royalties of Region and Department of Sport and Rec, that's forged our initial founding relationship and being involved in the development of Hay Park Pavilion. We would like to graciously be able to continue that relationship and moving forward. Finally, in closing, we as a sporting association are all about working together with all parties involved to come to a favoured resolution, to not only represent all involved within the city of Bunbury, but also within the greater region of the South West. Hence what both our sporting association clubs' names proudly represent, the South West Warriors and the South West Phoenix. Therefore, on behalf of both of our sporting associations, I'd like to thank all the councillors, the CEO and the Honourable Mayor for giving this opportunity to submit this deputation. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Davies. Mr. Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and councillors. We saw on the weekend how sport can motivate communities and bring people together. Western Bulldogs, the Cronulla Sharks, great to see communities getting behind their sporting clubs in such great fashion. The idea for me has always been that sport is one of the things we should support most in our community. For me as a child, Ronnie Buswell, Ivor Robbie, Bill Ivory, Ronnie Buswell were people who looked after junior sports and really inspired me that you could win and you could progress as a team member in a cooperative way. The idea of this South Hay Park Pavilion goes back to 2009. In 2010 we applied for the DSR funding and were unsuccessful. On the 8th of June, on receipt of that advice, I wrote as Mayor to the Premier, the Honourable Brendan Gills and Terry Waldron as the Minister for Sport and Recreation. And the first two paragraphs read as follows. As you may be aware, Bunbury Forum Force Soccer Club is a Bunbury and South West based club that competes in the first division of the State Soccer Association. In recent years it has finished in the first three. Its aim is to be number one, to enable it to be admitted to the State Premier League, and maybe in the distant future to be admitted to the national competition as per Wollongong, Gold Coast and Newcastle. I noted that we have more talent, but they have more people. Being in the Premier League is important, both enabling talented players to remain in the South West and still play at the highest level in the State Association. And in economic terms, as it brings a number of people to Bunbury every second weekend during winter, it also facilitates the development of the game at a local level as you attract better players and coaches who want to live and play as a South West resident in a higher level competition. Soccer is, of course, the world game, and if we can develop players of international standard, it provides more positive publicity
that you cannot gain by media advertising. Natalie Barr of Sunrise is an example where we get a lot of free publicity from Natalie's presence on TV. More recently, of course, we had 3 Olympians. We had 2 Paralympians, and in the grand final of the West Australian Football League, we got some good publicity about the fact that a footballer who began in Australind was the star player in the game for Peel, winning their first premiership. We need to remember that the clubs are voluntary associations. I don't know of any volunteer associations that put as much time into their organisation as the sporting clubs that we are talking about. And I just want to remind you, after the grants were made, these comments were made. Firstly, from Albert Nascimento from Bunbury Forum Force. It's been a long time coming, and a lot of hard work has gone into it by a lot of people, even before I was on the scene. It's not only something for the Bunbury Forum Force, I think the whole Southwest community will benefit from the upgrade. Mr. Nascimento went on to say that he was hoping that the building would be finished in time for the 2013 season. In fact, of course, it wasn't ready until the 2016 season. The Southwest coach of the rugby said the club was ecstatic about the news. The club is just really excited, and it's definitely something that can push the game forward in the region. To have facilities on a par with some of the Perth clubs would just be unreal. Now, we've gone from the ecstasy of the grant and the understanding by the state that we were going to use that grant to build a facility for soccer and rugby, which would also be available to other sporting organisations. And yet when it came to a conclusion, recently, because they're 12 days late in getting their incorporation complete, you've effectively sent them back and council back to stage 1. Please reconsider your situation.
Thank you, councillors. The CEO has prepared an alternative recommendation which endeavours to satisfy the legal requirements that the city has to face, and whilst there's been some conjecture about interpreting the Local Government Act and regulations, it's very clear in my mind that the CEO is quite correct in determining that we simply cannot lease this without going to the public seeking comment. So what the CEO is proposing, and I'll ask him to read through it, but I'll just summarise if I can, is that the 2 clubs in the next 2 weeks make a submission to the council. That submission will be then advertised for public comment. So that puts the onus back on the 2 clubs to collaboratively do what we've heard they will do tonight. Have that submission before council within 2 weeks, and that will be advertised for public comment. And then the council can make a decision at the end of that. So over to you, Mr. CEO, to run through it. I'll let the CEO run through it first, Councillor McGuinness, and then you can ask the questions, and then I'll seek some moving and seconding and voting. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Recommendations 1, 2 and 3 are as printed at the moment. Recommendation 4, as the Mayor just outlined, that we request the group, which I think I've got the term right, the Southwest Sporting Association, which is the combined entity, to submit a proposal in relation to the leasing and how they're going to manage the facility going forward, and that comes back to council by the 18th of October. Recommendation 5 is that, subject to that being a satisfactory proposal, and that's a decision for council to make, we advertise that disposal through a lease, so it will be a lease back to the group. Recommendation 6 then just says that we meet the requirements, so we prepare the lease and we put in specific conditions in relation to performance of that lease. So that's around the payment of fees and everything on time, and as per council's determination. Recommendation 7 is there in the event that the requested proposal isn't received or not accepted by council, that we can actually go out and advertise for general expressions of interest and allow the broader sporting community to have an opportunity to have a say. So that tries to finalise the whole lot by Christmas this year rather than dragging it out through to the new year. So it brings the whole process forward in the event that you don't get a satisfactory proposal from the sporting groups. So it gives them the onus to have a go at getting this back into council and allows council to consider their position further before we actually go out and publicly advertise. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Councillor McGuinness, questions, councillors?
Yes, please. The question is just around the recommendation as it stands, the original recommendation. Is it, if that is approved, can they, to me it still says that they're not excluded, the South West Sporting Association is not excluded from applying, right?
That's right.
Okay, that was my main question. And
That's
also,
right.
Can I ask one more quick question? Did we move it to February 2017 as opposed to the original date that was, there was some conjecture about having it all finalised if it does go out publicly, why we had to have that back by February, and could we not bring it forward earlier? Is there a reason why we can't do it earlier?
Yeah, thank you, Mr Mayor. The only reason for that was to ensure that we had sufficient time. We had to go through a formal process of drafting everything up. We've done most of that work now in terms of the draft expression of interest, and we feel we're just about ready to go, so we can bring that time frame forward, although it will still be tight.
Further questions? The CEO, Councillor Steck.
Thank you, sir. I have a couple of questions, if I may.
Sure.
Number one, why hasn't council sought legal advice on this particular issue when we do for other things quite often? Because if there's conjecture around the lease and the dates and whether or not they're entitled to have a continuation and right of way, why haven't we got legal advice to say that these people cannot have the lease and the right of way?
Well, that's a matter for the CEO, Councillor Steck, but the CEO has read the regulations and the Act. He's formed an opinion from the professional staff, which I agree with. It's pretty unequivocal. Next question.
Well, again, then I would say the copy that I have, that I'm sure all councillors have been provided with, doesn't actually show the date of which the contracts were signed. So there is conjecture on the dates anyways. But then, having said that, everyone knows how I say two sets of rules in this place. But here we are going down the path of penalising a not-for-profit organisation. Why is it then that when we had groups that were clearly behind on their rent, like Nuva and Fred Lamone, did we not foreclose on them straight away like we're jumping on this group?
Councillor Steck, it's inappropriate to make comments in a public forum on confidential matters affecting businesses. You know that. Do you have any further questions?
Well, again, sir, I would say then, why isn't the documentation clearly provided of when the dates of the deed of lease were actually signed by the Minister and presented to Council on a bona fide right?
CEO has responded to the questions raised by a ratepayer this evening, clearly showing the dates, but that information was available to you. Councillor Jones.
Mr Mayor, is there a likelihood that the South West Sporting Association will incur any costs in gathering the information that Council requires by the 18th of October 2016?
I wouldn't have thought so, Councillor Jones, but CEO.
Through Mr Mayor, most of the work should be done. It was in terms of formation of the group and how they were going to manage the facility going forward. So I believe most of that work should already be done.
Further question, Councillor Morris.
Yes, Mr Mayor. On number 5, it says subject to receipt of a satisfactory proposal. What criteria will be used to say that it's a satisfactory proposal, and who would actually be making that decision?
Thank you, Councillor CEO.
Yeah, through Mr Mayor, that proposal will come back to council. It will be a council decision at the end of the day. We'll provide some guidance to the groups as to what we believe is reasonable, but that will be a council decision.
Further questions before I seek further, Councillor Steck?
Thank you, sir. In the event that the South West Sporting Organisation or South West Phoenix and Soccer are not successful, what will happen with their purchase order of all their equipments and all of their fit-outs and the $20,000 that they've already ordered?
The officers will attend to that, Councillor Steck, if that should happen. Further questions? Can I have someone move the CEO's latest executive recommendation? Councillor Giles, Councillor Hayward seconded. This one we're now dealing with, which is on the screen. Is it on your screen? You happy with that, Councillor Giles? You're moving that. And Councillor Hayward, did you second that? Councillor Giles?
Yes, thank you, Mr Mayor. I'm very pleased that this alternate recommendation has come up because I was agonising over this for some time. I believe that I am a passionate advocate for sporting groups, and I do believe, as Mr Smith said, it does bring communities together, and I think it's a great thing for our community to have such facilities. So whilst I noted from our questions last week and the information that we've been given that the legalities of the situation were that we had to go through a particular process and governance required that we do that, I'm glad to see that there is a little leeway here so that the groups can actually finish the process, which they probably should have finished before, but perhaps they've learned from that this is a serious business and not something to be, there's not much leeway. So I would ask councillors to support this motion because I think it is a good resolution and I think it might be a good compromise all round. Thank you.
Councillor Hayward.
Look, I'm very happy to second this motion. I think the things that we need to consider is that this building was built specifically for soccer and rugby in mind. So it was good enough for some years ago to go out and put quite a lot of money in and to ask the state government to support us in supporting them. And I just think it's quite outrageous in some ways that we now wouldn't give them every opportunity to try to get them back into that building, which is what it was purpose-built to do, and doing very well at their sports. And I think that if there is a way that we can do that, I understand there's some legal trappings, but I think that it is our responsibility to show some leadership to provide a way forward for these groups. I want to certainly thank the CEO for providing that through this method, and I'd encourage councillors to support it and to get these people back in their stadium. Thank you.
Is there a speaker against? Councillor Steck.
Thank you, sir. I realise my hands are tied because I can't give a pro forma that's completely opposite to a motion that's before you. But if I could, and the standing orders will allow it, I would be doing it. Because I'm not like other councillors in this room. I'm actually very disappointed with this outcome. And sir, the reason I'm disappointed with this outcome is because I have been involved with this from a councillor's perspective since 2007. And to see this come to this point now is very sad. I myself have spent years and years and years in sporting organisations with my children. I think I spent about 7 or 8 years running secretaries of 6 divisions. And for a sporting organisation to have to turn around and reapply for a purpose-built building when they only have intentions of growing the sport and possibly internationally as well, I think it's a bit of a disgrace that we turn around to a group and simply say, well, you didn't get this in on time, the 4 or 5 days apply, therefore you must go back to the community and put a submission in and line up with everyone else. I don't see that's fair. I rang the department today to actually seek advice. They said to me, that doesn't sound right, get to the bottom of it. Now, I don't know when I've ever read an application for any of the sporting organisations, such as the football club, to go and ask for an exemption when they clearly run a bar as well. Clearly they do. Clearly so does the aero clubs, the speedway, the hockey association, the netball association, and I've been involved with hockey for many of years, and we've never had to apply for the lease of that building, not ever, not in this particular environment. And whilst the conjecture is that it doesn't legally conform, well, I completely dispute that. And the lack of evidence of a legal opinion clearly says to me, balk at that very quickly. Because I would have thought in every other thing that we do in this council chamber in due diligence, we actually seek legal advice. And this particular item we have not. We've just gone on, nothing against the CEO, nothing against the Mayor. We've just gone on through you, Mr Mayor and Mr CEO, your opinion. Whilst I always value your opinion in this particular item, I'm simply saying we could have done better, we could have got legal advice. Given the fact that you've got over 400 kids in soccer from last count, 400 in rugby, you've got 5 or 6 teams. Far as I know that they had a tournament coming between the 8th and the 10th of some 80 teams invited across the southwest. They've got stock, they've got a new infrastructure in place, they've got a new procedure for their meetings, 2 clubs joining together as one. That's not easy. I should know. I've been involved with really big clubs. I take my hat off to them for how hard they've worked. And I'm really, really disappointed in council.
Speaker 4, Councillor Kelly.
Yeah, Mr Mayor, look, I didn't intend to speak on this, but I think I'd like to say a couple of words. Firstly, sometimes things are fair and sometimes things aren't fair. And the wisdom of the council, it comes down to us to make some sort of decision. In this case, I think we're evoking the mercy clause, and we have given the opportunity to the 2 clubs to get their act together, so to speak, if I can use that clause, and provide us with a firm way forward. And after having heard the 2 speakers tonight, the first 2 speakers, I believe that can be done. It is, to some extent, crunch time, if you like, and that crunch time has to be met, and it has to be met firmly, and it has to be met with a classy and very concerted effort in its submission, because the submission will come to the staff who will provide us with information and a critique of it, and it will come back to us. We have a responsibility to ensure that this building, and I'll just correct it wasn't just for soccer and rugby. This is a multi-sports pavilion, always has been, and there will be multiple sports there. It's important that we get it right. It is a significant piece of infrastructure. I thought that when we worked towards what we were doing, that we were on a good track. For whatever reason, it went awry. Now, that's nothing we can do about now, but I think that the CEO's effort to put together 1 to 7 and to allow the clubs to get their brains trust together and work forward on it, and they've only got 2 weeks to do it, I think is an admirable way to go. It's a fair way to go, and I'll be supporting the alternative as it is, knowing full well that in a couple of weeks it'll be back to us, and that the responsibility to have something that is cogent together to bring to us is up to the clubs. So I'll be supporting it. Thanks, Mr Mayor.
Thank you. Further speaker against? Councillor Giles.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Look, I think it's all been said really, and I think this is a way forward. I think the clubs have the opportunity now to show that they can do this, and I think it behoves us to support this motion. Thank you.
Thank you. All in favour, please indicate. Those against? 2 against. That's carried. Councillor Stick and Steele are against. The rest are in favour. I'd encourage the club representatives to stay behind tonight and meet with the CEO and Director of the Sports to have a discussion about where to from here. Thanks, Councillor Giles. Are you heading off too? Okay. Councillor Steele is leaving the meeting, and Councillor Giles has declared an interest. Can I also move the executive recommendation to 10.4.1? Councillor Kelly. All right.
Sorry.
That's okay. I've noted that. Just proximity?
Yes.
Okay.
Unless you want to call
No.
it financial, because it is backing, so just to play the safe side, I'll call it financial.
Thank you, Councillor Stick. Just pause while you depart. You can fill that out later. So, Councillor Kelly moves. Is there a seconder? Councillor Cook. Is there likely to be any debate on this? I'll put it all in favour. It's carried unanimously. Thank you. Thanks, Councillor Cook. Mr. Burns. Welcome. You have 5 minutes, Martin.
Thank you. I won't need 5 minutes. I'll take about 2 minutes. Good evening, Your Worship, and the councillors, ladies and gentlemen. I'm just referring back to an email that I got from the council regarding our signage. We have this balloon on our roof, which obviously is a point of contention. It says here, I just highlight, it's got adverse impacts on the visual amenity of the locality. I'd like to get somebody to explain that to me, because that's got me completely confused. All I really need to do is ask if the council would be so good as to extend our signage to the end of the month, so this contract runs out and we can remove the balloon and solve the problem. And that's all I've really got to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Burns. Councillors, there are two recommendations, options here. If someone wishes to move the... Councillor Kelly. Alternate recommendation. Seconded. Councillor Jones. Is there likely to be any debate? I'll put it all in favour. That's approved unanimously. There you go, Mr. Burns. Sweet.
I didn't want to waste too much of your time, because obviously we're getting wasted a lot of time.
We move on to 10.43. You can join us next year if you like. I'll wait. Is there anybody out there? Did she declare an interest? No, she just left. Okay. Liz, would you note that Councillor Warnock wasn't here for that vote? Thanks. That's all right, Councillor Cook. Okay, we're hanging in there, councillors. One item to go. 10.4, well, there's a couple more items to go. 10.43. Can I have someone move the executive recommendation?
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to move that the item be deferred for 2 rounds.
For what reason, Councillor Jones?
Mr. Mayor, many of the stakeholders who are referred to in the item don't have postal services at their doorsteps. They use the post office boxes at Jalora, and at least one of these stakeholders only picked up the City of Bunbury correspondence last Monday, which was the day before the briefing. The City of Bunbury correspondence was dated September the 21st, and it was in his hands on September the 26th.
So the reason you're seeking this deferment is to enable all those stakeholders to be adequately informed about the proposal?
That's correct, Mr. Mayor. At
Okay.
least one of them is overseas.
That's okay, Councillor Jones. Is there a seconder? Councillor Steck, I'll put it all in favour. Those against? That's carried. It's deferred for 2 weeks.
For 2 rounds.
2 rounds, I beg your pardon. We move on, councillors. Someone prepared to move that. Councillor Cook, Councillor Kelly, all in favour. That's carried. 11.2. Councillor Cook, Councillor McGuinness, all in favour. That's carried unanimously. Thank you. Thank you very much, councillors. Ladies and gentlemen, I declare the meeting closed at 6:24 p.m. Thanks, Liz. We will, I can tell you. It's going to be fantastic. close at 6:23,
Yeah, so,